freedom is good. We were asked not to do that by Pakistan, who's our friend, and didn't understand anything to deal market. But I think Project Freedom is good, but I think we have other ways of doing it also. We may go back to Project Freedom if things don't happen, but it'd be Project Freedom Plus, meaning Project Freedom Plus other.
As Donald Trump signals he wants to restart Project Freedom, Saudi Arabia lodges its second objection to his war plans. Riyadh is saying no to Trump's warplanes, even as Iran's power broker Mujtaba Khamenei watches the standoff from the sidelines. Trump's new plan to revive Project Freedom appears to stumble before takeoff, with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman rebuffing US advances. Saudi officials are crying misleading plot over reports linking Project Freedom to the use of Saudi airspace. As Trump appears eager to escalate, Arab capitals grow increasingly wary of provoking Iran's anger in an already volatile Gulf. While US-Iran clashes continue to escalate, a fresh controversy broke out over Saudi Arabia's real role in the war. Saudi Arabia firmly denied reports claiming Riyadh had opened its airspace for possible US military action against Iran. A Saudi official publicly dismissed the circulating media claims, describing them as misleading and not reflecting the kingdom's stance. A Saudi official said, and I quote, "The kingdom did not allow the use of its airspace to support offensive military operations. There are parties trying to give a misleading image of Saudi Arabia's position for suspicious reasons," unquote. Riyadh instead emphasized that it supports de-escalation efforts and is backing Pakistan's diplomatic mediation between Washington and Tehran. Saudi officials stressed that the kingdom has never permitted US operations targeting Iran to be launched through Saudi airspace. These denials came even as other reports alleged that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait had relaxed restrictions on US access to their military bases. This reversal removes a key obstacle for Donald Trump's Hormuz shipping guide initiative, making it technically feasible to use regional airfields, fuel supplies, and command nodes for the operation. US officials told the Wall Street Journal that Washington is now actively considering restarting Project Freedom, examining how to resume the efforts without triggering fresh friction with Gulf partners. Pentagon officials indicated the operation could resume as early as this week, pending coordination with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other Gulf allies on flight paths and security arrangements. The operation depends heavily on access to Saudi and Kuwaiti territory, airspace, and military infrastructure, including radar coverage, refueling support, and overland transit corridors. The development comes just days after Riyadh briefly limited cooperation over Project Freedom, marking a sharp but short-lived pullback in the long-standing security relationship. The dispute exposed one of the most serious strains between Washington and Riyadh in recent years, highlighting differing risk tolerances in the evolving Gulf crisis. Riyadh was alarmed by a series of targeted attacks on shipping routes and oil infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates, which raised doubts about the reliability of US protection. Gulf leaders also grew uneasy after US officials described Iran's attacks as low-level harassment, a framing they felt downplayed the real-world economic and security impact. Saudi leadership feared Washington was underestimating the seriousness of the threat, particularly in the context of global energy flows and regional stability. The rising tensions triggered urgent calls between Donald Trump and Mohammed bin Salman, as both sides tried to restore working alignment behind the scenes. Saudi officials said MBS directly informed Trump about restricting US military access to bases and airspace, using the move as leverage to force a pause in the initiative. According to officials, Trump agreed to pause the project after consultations with Gulf leaders and regional mediators, seeking to rebuild trust before resuming the operation. The temporary pause lasted only after Project Freedom had been in operation for about 36 hours, underscoring both the ambition and the fragility of the plan. Washington is now reassessing how to restart the mission in a way that reassures Gulf partners while avoiding steps that could trigger a wider military escalation in the Strait of Hormuz. A sudden pause of Project Freedom has exposed a deep crack within the U.S. coalition of allies in the Gulf, raising questions about coordination and shared strategy. As per U.S. officials, Donald Trump halted Project Freedom after Saudi Arabia formally objected, according to NBC, which described the move as a diplomatic setback. Riyadh reportedly suspended permission for the U.S. military to use its bases and airspace for the operation, limiting the reach of American air and logistical support. The dispute reportedly began after Trump unexpectedly announced the operation on Truth Social, bypassing the usual back-channel consultations with Gulf partners. Saudi leadership was reportedly angered by the public announcement and the lack of prior coordination, feeling it risked drawing the kingdom deeper into the U.S.-Iran standoff. In response, the kingdom informed Washington that U.S. aircraft could no longer fly from Prince Sultan Air Base, a key hub for regional operations. The restriction created an immediate operational crisis for the Pentagon, which had relied on Saudi facilities to stage airlifts, surveillance, and command assets. Even a direct phone call between Trump and Mohammed bin Salman reportedly failed to resolve the issue, underscoring the depth of the disagreement. The move looks like Riyadh's effort to avoid being dragged into another open U.S.-Iran clash, while still preserving its broader security ties with Washington. Meanwhile, as Saudi Arabia denied opening its airspace, Donald Trump was already hinting at restarting Project Freedom.
We'll go a different route if everything gets to get signed up and buttoned up. Project Freedom is good. We were asked not to do that by Pakistan, who's our friend, and didn't want to sign anything to field market. But I think Project Freedom is good, but I think we have other ways of doing it also. We may go back to Project Freedom if things don't happen, but it'd be Project Freedom Plus, meaning Project Freedom Plus other.
On May 7th, American and Iranian forces directly exchanged fire for the first time since the April ceasefire agreement. The United States launched what it called self-defense strikes on Iran as explosions rocked Qeshm Island, Sirik, and Bandar Abbas. Reports claim American forces also targeted an Iranian oil tanker and another Iranian vessel near the strategic Gulf waters. In retaliation, Iran launched attacks targeting American destroyers stationed inside the highly sensitive Strait of Hormuz region. Donald Trump accused Iran of behaving irrationally after military tensions and attacks intensified sharply overnight across the Gulf. President Trump claimed 3 American destroyers safely crossed Hormuz despite reportedly facing Iranian missiles, drones, and hostile threats. Trump warned Washington would respond far more aggressively unless Tehran quickly agreed to a deal with the United States. Despite the clashes, Trump insisted the ceasefire remained active and dismissed the strikes as merely a love tap. Meanwhile, Iran claimed its military inflicted damage on American naval assets and forced U.S. warships to retreat from Hormuz. The latest confrontation unfolded as Tehran reviewed a new American proposal aimed at ending the ongoing conflict. Saudi Arabia on May 4th issued a formal reaction to the Iranian attacks on the UAE's Fujairah region and nearby U.S. warships, signaling growing alarm in Riyadh over the latest escalation. Riyadh condemned what it described as the first Iranian strike on Gulf countries since the ceasefire came into effect, warning that such actions threaten the entire region's stability. The Iranian attacks took place on the very day that the United States began guiding commercial cargo ships through the Strait of Hormuz under new naval protection mission. The UAE's defense ministry said its air defenses had engaged a total of 15 incoming Iranian missiles and 4 drones on May 4th, intercepting many of them before impact. One of the drone strikes caused a fire at a key oil facility in the Emirate of Fujairah, injuring 3 Indian workers who were present at the site when the blast occurred. In a separate statement, the UK military reported that fires had broken out on board 2 cargo ships off the UAE's coast, believed to be linked to the same wave of attacks. Iranian officials described the strike on Fujairah as a direct consequence of what they called US adventurism, blaming Washington's new naval moves for provoking the confrontation. Sources speaking to Iran's state broadcaster IIB said the attack was the product of US adventurism for illegal passage of ships, accusing America of trying to force its way through Hormuz. Saudi Arabia warned that any disruption near the Strait of Hormuz could severely impact international supply chains and global commerce. Saudi envoy Abdulaziz Al-Waisal described the Strait of Hormuz as essential for global maritime and economic stability. Abdulaziz Al-Waisal said, and I quote, "Any threat to the freedom of navigation in the strait directly impacts the stability of global markets and international supply chains," unquote. Abdulaziz Al-Waisal warned prolonged instability around Hormuz could trigger serious humanitarian consequences and deepen global economic uncertainty.